Hello everyone, my name is Lucas King, and the goal of my little presentation today is to try to help us think about a big question. How can we maximize the level of engagement, contribution, and sharing in our networks? How can we help our networks identify and mobilize potential resources toward our shared goals? I'm calling this presentation Mining Your Network. Because as leaders of your networks and partnerships, I think of you in a way like geologists or miners. There are tremendous resources within your networks. And the question is, how do you extract or draw out all that potential? And to answer that question, I'd like to start with this guy, Rob McEwen. Yes, he is sitting on a pile of gold bricks. Rob McEwen was an investment banker who got involved in the gold business in the 1990s. He bought a mine in Canada that at the time was producing a small amount of gold, but he believed that there was more potential in the mine. And so he paid his geologists $10 million to conduct detailed studies of the mine. And they came back and they said, yes, Mr. McEwen, there is a huge potential in this mine. The only problem is we don't know where to dig. And around that time, McEwen attended a conference in Silicon Valley on open source software, and he got this crazy idea. If his geologists didn't know where to dig, why not ask the world? So in 2000, he launched the Goldcorp Challenge, and he posted all their proprietary data, all their geological studies, everything online for the world to see. And he offered $575,000 in prizes to anyone who could come up with viable locations to dig. So they got more than 1,000 scientists, engineers, and geologists from 50 different countries who downloaded all the data on the mine. And altogether, they identified more than 110 potential sites. Half of those targets were previously unknown to McEwen's own geologists. So he ended up awarding 5 top prizes, and all 4 of the locations that they chose to explore hit gold. More than $6 billion worth of gold. And the winning team of the Goldcorp Challenge was a collaboration of geologists in Australia who had never been to the mine, had never even been to Canada. They created 3-dimensional computer models of the mine, and their studies led to massive improvements in the mine's productivity. So within 2 years, the mine went from producing 50,000 ounces of gold per year at a cost of $360 an ounce to 500,000 ounces of gold per year at a cost of $60 an ounce. And what's the point of the story? Well, maybe you feel like those geologists. You have all the info, you have all the data, but where's the gold? Like Rob McEwen, maybe you need to step back and get a different picture of your network or partnership, like those Australian geologists did. And maybe you need a way of modeling your partnership or network so that you know where to look for gold. In order to mine the full potential of your network, I suggest that you need to create 4 levels of awareness. And those are goals, needs, capacities, and values. Okay, let's start with goals. And the big question here is, what is the level of awareness in your group of your shared goals and of the outcomes and activities and the resources required to accomplish those goals? How have you mapped that out, and how do you communicate it within your network? Now, this diagram just represents an outcomes model or a logic model, which is just one way of mapping out goals. But what it represents is thinking systematically about what it will take to accomplish your goals. And most of the time, we don't do that. Typically, we start with a statement of our goals, and then we jump right to action plans or strategies, really with only a vague notion of all the if-then assumptions behind our plans. And mapping out your goals and communicating them in a logical way will help you clarify the assumptions behind your plans. And more importantly, it helps people connect the dots. As you know, people will really only be engaged in your network or partnership to the extent that they perceive there's some personal value to their engagement. When you map out and clearly communicate the shared goals of the network, it helps people, especially new people, connect the goals of the partnership to their own ministry goals. and the resources required to their own capabilities and potential contributions. So all of that is to ask, in your network, how are you communicating your goals and the outcomes and activities and the resources required to accomplish those goals? And what are the ways that you can help people connect the dots? And this leads to the second level of awareness, needs. And the big question here is, in your group, what is the level of awareness of the needs of the network, both in terms of what it takes to operate the network and in terms of what you're trying to accomplish together? We all know partnerships don't come free. So what are the ways that you communicate those needs, and how does someone go about volunteering their capacities? And the idea here is very simple. You have a sense already of what resources are required to accomplish your goals, so you know what you want and what you've got. Then where is the gap? And I'm especially thinking about new people again. Do people who are coming into your partnership know how to get engaged if they have something to contribute? Do they know where to go? Do they know who to talk to? After years of working with volunteers at the local church level, I know that people will simply assume that the leadership team has it all figured out. If people don't know the needs, they will just assume that there aren't any. And meanwhile, a tiny group of overworked and underpaid people in the background is shedding blood, sweat, and tears trying to keep everything together. I don't know if any of you feel like you can relate to that, but all of this is really to ask, how are you communicating the needs of the network? And what are ways that people can volunteer or contribute or match their own capacities to those needs? And that leads to the third level of awareness, capacities. The big question here is, what is the level of awareness of the capacities of the other partners? Do you have a process for exploring those strengths and making them visible? In many ways, strong partnerships are like strong teams. There's a myth and a reality about what makes a good team player. And the myth says that good team players do whatever it takes to help the team. But the reality is that good team players deliberately volunteer their strengths to the team. Every sports team knows the strong points of each player, and they depend on each other to play to their strengths. That's the same in partnerships. We should not just be looking for roles to fill, but how to identify and activate the strengths of the individuals and the organizations involved. So how are you doing that in your own group? You might use surveys or observations or conversations where you're creating space during your gatherings for people to really explore and talk about their strong points and what they have to offer. We don't want to limit ourselves to looking only for certain kinds of abilities or resources because we can blind ourselves. You see, the same goals can be accomplished with different capacities. And the same capacities can be put to use for different goals. God equips people in such a wide variety of ways. And so we need to be open to the people that God has brought into our partnerships and how God has empowered them, and if needed, revise our own plans accordingly. So on our team, we've used many different kinds of assessments in working with other teams in the context of their partnerships. And the value of those assessments, I think, is that they give people different lenses for looking at themselves. They give the partnership a common language for understanding each other's strengths and weaknesses. A few years ago, I met with a man in a restaurant outside London who had gone through our partnership training years and years ago. And he said one of the most meaningful things was the assessment tool because it showed him how he could personally best contribute to a team, and it had made a tremendous difference in his leadership over the years. So, all of this is to ask, in what ways are you exploring the strengths and capacities of the individuals and the organizations they represent within your network? And have you, even as a leadership team, done that so that you can know how you can best work together? And that brings us to the last level, the level of values. And the question here is, to what degree have you, as a leadership team, cultivated a culture of sharing in your network? And how do you articulate and uphold a value for volunteerism? It goes without saying that if people don't volunteer their capacities, you're never going to be able to do anything significant. One way that you can shape the volunteer culture of your partnership is to choose your heroes and tell their stories. When you hold up your volunteer heroes, when you tell those stories, it sets a standard and it shows people what a real engagement, what a real contribution looks like. Again, I'm thinking about the new people. From most of the network and partnership meetings I've attended, nearly 50% of the people there were new. And so, one thing I'd say for sure is that at the very beginning, create an assimilation or an onboarding process where a key component is painting a picture of what we like to call a partnership champion. Just like a sports team, again, a champion is someone in your network of partnership who has moved from the stadium to the bench to the field. They are in the game. They are engaged. And there are three qualities of a partnership champion. We use the symbols of head, heart, and hand to remember those, but the head basically means that a partnership champion understands the potential of the partnership and can see the value of their own participation. And the heart means that a champion advocates for the partnership within their own organizations or spheres of influence. They sell the dream among their own colleagues. And the hand means that a champion secures the commitment of their own organizations. They contribute their time, their talents, their knowledge, their connections, and their resources. And so all of this is to ask, in your own context, how are you shaping a culture of sharing? And how do you show people what it really looks like to be engaged? Let me just wrap up here with a couple phrases or ideas from Scripture that I hope will be encouraging to you, because I know that for most of you, your engagement in a partnership or network is just another layer on an already very busy life. You've got your regular day jobs and other ministry commitments on top of that, and then you've got your network involvement, and on top of that, you're a part of the leadership of the network. So the first idea I want to share is this. It's the phrase, I, yet not I. And this comes from 1 Corinthians 15, Paul talking about his call as an apostle to ministry. And he says, God's grace wasn't without effect in his life. No, I worked harder, he said, than all the other apostles. Yet not I, but the grace of God that was with me. And Paul says this in different ways in many different places. Again, in Colossians 1, he says, talking about the goal of his ministry, he says, to this end I labor, struggling with all his energy, the energy of Christ, which so powerfully works in me. And for me, the takeaway here is that missional partnerships are not just a multiplication of our own efforts and resources. Ultimately, it is God who is empowering the work. And the other phrase comes from Genesis, actually from Exodus chapter 4. Moses at the burning bush encountering God, he says, what if they don't believe me? What if they don't listen to me? And the Lord says to him, what is that in your hand? Oh, just a staff, Moses says. And yet we know, if you know the rest of the story, that with that simple staff, Moses went on through God's power to perform some of the greatest miracles that had ever been seen in the world up to that time. And my takeaway from this is that even the most insignificant resource can become a powerful tool in the hands of God. So let's not overlook the little things in the context of our partnerships and networks, because what each person brings is of tremendous value when empowered by God. So my prayer for you in conclusion is just that God would fill you with his power and multiply your resources as you work together to accomplish his purposes around the world. God bless.